This Islamic empire controlled half of West Africa. Why don't we talk about it? Before there was Nigeria, there was a powerful empire, stretching across the dusty Sahel, uniting dozens of Hausa kingdoms and Fulani clans under one banner. It had its own currency, courts, religious scholars, and a standing army. Its leader was called the Commander of the Faithful, Amir al-Mu'minin. Yet within a century, it fell. Here is the story of faith, reform, intellectual power, contradiction, and ultimately, colonial erasure. Today, Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation, with over 220 million people speaking hundreds of languages and practicing multiple faiths. But before Nigeria, much of northern Nigeria and parts of Niger, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, and Chad were governed by a vast, literate, decentralized Islamic empire, the Sokoto Caliphate. Founded in 1804, it lasted until 1903, when it was conquered by British forces. Its influence extended beyond politics into religion, scholarship, women's education, law, and culture. The Sokoto Caliphate, particularly in its early to mid-19th century period, was a major rival to the Oyo Empire in West Africa. While the Oyo Empire was in decline due to internal strife, the Sokoto Caliphate was rising, and their expansion led to conflicts, especially with Ilorin, a Yoruba vassal state of Oyo, which was allied with Sokoto. Yet today, its memory is obscure. How did this empire emerge? Why did it thrive? And why did it fall? To understand, we must go back to one man, Usman dan Fodio. Born in December 1754 in Marata, Gobir, he was a Fulani child of a scholarly family of the Torankawa clan, an immigrant clan originally from Futa Toro in Senegal. His father, Muhammad Fodio, and other relatives were revered teachers. From a young age, Usman memorized the Quran, then immersed himself in Islamic sciences, Arabic grammar, logic, and astronomy. He walked across the region Degel, Agadez, Kebbi, Zamfara, studying under renowned teachers, one of which was Jibril ibn Umar, a prominent Sufi scholar, who also initiated him into the Qadri Sufi order. By the 1770s, he was a traveling scholar, known for harsh critiques of rulers. Hausa kings claimed Islam, but allowed pagan customs, heavy taxation, and bribery. He condemned them for hypocrisy, calling for sincerity in faith, justice in governance, and charity in society. This moral clarity attracted Fulani herders and disgruntled Hausa academics. He settled in Degel around 1793. He established a significant base there, becoming a respected religious figure with a large following in Hausa land. At this time, he was approaching 40 years old and had already acquired the title of Shehu, or Sheikh. Degel became a center for his preaching and religious teaching. The Sultan of Gobir, specifically King Nafata and later Yunfa, became alarmed by Usman dan Fodio's growing popularity and influence. Usman dan Fodio's followers had grown considerably, and his advocacy for Islamic reform and self-defense challenged the existing political and social order. Usman dan Fodio did not reject the Sultan of Gobir outright initially, but his community faced increasing restrictions and persecution. Eventually, escalating tensions and conflict led to Usman dan Fodio's exile from Gobir and the declaration of war, marking the beginning of the Sokoto Jihad. Usman dan Fodio's hijrah, mirroring Prophet Muhammad's, occurred in February 1804, when he and his followers migrated from Degel to Gudu, about 30 miles to the northwest. This migration was a crucial step in the Fulani Jihad and the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate. His stated aim: remove injustice, re-establish Sharia, unify believers under ethical governance. In December 1804, Usman dan Fodio's forces suffered a significant defeat at the Battle of Suntua against the Hausa ruler Yunfa and his Tuareg allies. Yunfa's army, composed of Hausa warriors and Tuareg allies, decisively defeated Usman dan Fodio's forces. This was one of the first major engagements of the Fulani War. The battle resulted in heavy losses for Usman's side, with some sources estimating around 2,000 to 3,000 men killed, including 200 Hafiz, scholars who had memorized the Quran. Despite the loss, the defeat did not halt the jihad. Following the defeat, Usman dan Fodio retaliated by capturing the village of Matankari, which led to another major battle, the Battle of Tabkin Quado. By February 1808, Usman dan Fodio's forces had achieved significant victories, conquering several Hausa city-states, including Gobir and Kano. This conquest was a crucial step in the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate. While the Sokoto Caliphate was divided into eastern and western sectors, it wasn't structured into 30 emirates by Usman dan Fodio. He appointed his son, Muhammad Bello, to oversee the eastern region, which included Sokoto, and his brother, Abdullahi, to oversee the western region, with Gwandu as its capital. The Caliphate was indeed divided to manage the vast territories acquired during the Fulani War, with Bello and Abdullahi playing key administrative roles. He stepped down and returned to teaching. In Sokoto and then Safawa, he mentored hundreds of disciples, hosted regular retreats, and penned over 100 works on law, ethics, and society. He warned that the bureaucracy could become oppressive and advised emirs to be just, humble, and knowledgeable. Education was central. He championed meritocracy in governance, judges selected for scholarship, administrators held accountable, taxes minimized. He also promoted women's learning. His daughter Nana Asmao became a towering figure. Fluent in Arabic, Hausa, and Fulfulde, she wrote dozens of works, poems, historical treatises, and guidance for women. In 1838, she founded the Yan Taru Sisterhood, female teachers carrying Islamic education into villages, modeling merit-based education for women. She traveled with a distinctive hat and camel, serving as a role model for community empowerment. At its zenith, the Caliphate united over 30 emirates, governed an estimated 20 million people, and stretched across what is now northern Nigeria, southern Niger, northern Cameroon, and parts of Burkina Faso and Chad. Its economy surged. Salt routes, gold, leather, textiles, and agriculture. Cities like Kano had over 30,000 inhabitants, featuring libraries, markets, mosques, and Quran schools. Arabic was a lingua franca among elites. Dan Fodio believed that the sword of truth was found in written and spoken word, not just steel. But the Caliphate faced moral and structural issues. It relied on slavery, millions of people enslaved by 1900. These workers supported estates, farms, construction, and bureaucracy. Despite prohibitions on slavery's excesses and manumission paths, its scale raised deep contradictions between spiritual ideals and power structures. Slavery, though institutionalized with legal checks, remained a troubling component of its foundation. Politically, by the mid-1800s, fissures appeared. Internal rebellions broke out, including one led by Abd al-Salam. It was a significant challenge to the Fulani leadership of the Caliphate and was primarily driven by Hausa grievances against perceived Fulani dominance and unequal treatment. Emirs began resisting central authority. Empire cohesion faltered. The decentralized model that once brought flexibility now sowed seeds of fragmentation. Some emirates began prioritizing local interests over caliphal unity, creating instability. Then colonization arrived. Europeans claimed to end slavery and civilize, but motives were economic and imperial. In 1897, the British conquered Benin. By 1900, Frederick Lugard's Royal Niger Company pushed inland, negotiating treaties, applying pressure, and slowly subjugating territories. In January 1903, British troops captured Kano, then Sokoto in March 1903. While the last vizier of the Caliphate conceded to British rule on March 13, 1903, resistance continued, culminating in the death of Sultan Muhammadu Attahiru I at the Battle of Burmi in June 1903. The British imposed indirect rule. Emirs remained but lost sovereignty. The Sultan title survived and remains a spiritual giant in Nigerian Islam. The Sokoto Caliphate, as a political entity, was dissolved, but its social and religious institutions remained resilient. Dan Fodio's intellectual legacy endures. His writings remain standard Islamic texts. His judicial model continues, influencing Nigeria's legal pluralism. Quranic schools use his works. The Sultan's office recently distributed millions of his books, reviving his teachings. Across the Sahel, scholars still study Dan Fodio in Chad, Sudan, Senegal, and Burkina Faso. Sokoto's emirates still guide local governance. Mosques echo his sermons. Fulani identity and Hausa trade flourish. His family lines still produce emirs and intellectual leaders. The Sultan of Sokoto, currently recognized as the spiritual leader of Nigeria's Muslims, remains an influential figure in West African Islam. Yet today, most Africans and the world remember the Caliphate as a footnote to colonialism. Students may know Nigeria started in 1960, but few know that half a century earlier, a scholarly, decentralized, religiously grounded empire held sway. The legacy of Sokoto challenges the stereotype of a disorganized Africa prior to European intervention. Instead, it offers an image of a continent capable of producing visionary reformers, complex legal systems, and literate bureaucracies. This isn't niche history, it's global history. It challenges stereotypes of pre-colonial Africa. It shows that empires could be spiritual, legal, decentralized, literate. They could promote women's education and build institutions. They could create empires of justice and law, yet still confront moral contradictions. So when we think of Nigeria, remember, before Nigeria, there was Sokoto. Before colonial borders, there was scholarship, justice, spiritual revival, educational innovation, and a moral struggle between ideals and institutions. Usman and Fodio didn't just found an empire, he founded a vision of what Islamic governance in Africa could be. If this story moved you, share it. If it surprised you, subscribe. And if you want more lost empires, unsung intellectual dynasties, or female leaders forgotten by time, tell me, which African story should we uncover next?